So, good morning and welcome to everyone to this month's The New World of New Biz webinar in what is shaping up to probably be one of the biggest and busiest Q4s that we've probably seen for a long time. So welcome everyone. To those of you that maybe haven't joined us before, my name is Katie. I'm about to introduce all my guests who hopefully you can see. And I am the founder of Street Agency. We are a new business consultancy. We help agencies attract and win the clients that need them, which of course is going to be very important in Q4. And we have a fantastic lineup of guests and people that I'm also proud to call my friends with me this morning. So first of all, we have the wonderful Sam Booth. Say hello, Sam.
Hello, how are you doing?
It's obvious because you're called Sam, but obviously women can also be called Sam. So Sam is joining us as our sponsor. But Sam and I have met and known each other for a little while. Any of you who tune into our podcast will have maybe already heard me and Sam having a chat. So he and I have probably pitched up against each other a little bit when I was at RedWeb and Sam was at Reading Room. So not only has been head of new business, but also is now CEO of Just After Midnight. And of course runs all the new business strategies there, as well as the agency. I also have the lovely Anna from Game. In fact, all of you guys have been on the podcast. I've just realised this. That's awesome. Yay. Didn't plan that, by the way. So the lovely Anna joins us from Game. And she is, Anna, remind me of your exact job title.
Yeah, it's a long one. Digital and Community Engagement Manager.
Wow. Well, a good one as well. So Anna does, again, some great things from, well, not just a new business point of view, because I'm hoping in this session she's going to share some insights into what she wants to hear from agencies and Game's plan for their Q4, but also has worked agency side. And we used to sit next to each other at RedWeb. There we go. I'm giving RedWeb a great big plug today. And then last but not least, the very lovely Tish Mousell. So Tish Mousell, now I'm going to, you introduce yourself, Tish. You're going to do a better job of introducing yourself.
Well, hello everybody. I'm a trainer, but my background is working in creative agencies. I started in media, worked in account management for many years, worked on a lot of pitches, and I now teach people how to present, but also help agencies with pitching. Thanks. Thank you, Katie.
There we go. So a stellar lineup, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to answer lots of your questions, thoughts, etc., around about how to approach new business in what is shaping up to be a very busy Q4. We have the most amount of sign-ups ever for this month's event, approaching nearly 700 of you. So yeah, thank you all for signing up. And for those of you that have joined, I know lots of you also listen on YouTube later. So if you are watching on YouTube later, also hello. So I'm going to get started by, of course, putting Anna in the hot seat here as the client. So Anna, tell me, because I know all of the agencies that are joining today are going to be super interested to understand what are you working up towards in Q4, and what do you want to hear from agencies from a new biz point of view?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year, this one. And this peak is definitely, from a retail point of view, so different to every other. I think it's one of those where we're trying to be quite agile and try to sort of put contingency plans in, because we don't know whether we're going into a second wave. All of our research from previous years kind of is a bit null and void, because everybody is acting very differently this year. So we're having to do it as we go this year and trying to predict what people are going to do, whereas normally we can kind of work it out on previous years. I have a lot of people I know that are in brands haven't actually sort of even picked their peak agencies yet. We haven't with ours. And I know a lot of agency friends are a bit concerned because they haven't secured all their peak brands yet. And it's one of those things where people shouldn't worry too much, because there's a lot of people that haven't done stuff yet. And I think the one thing that, from a brand point of view, we're looking for people to not give the same pitch that they always give every year, you know, sort of because they're a bit more consistent, but something a bit more tailored for the year on contingency plans, obviously the change to shift online, to social media, how the customers, a sort of understanding of how customers are changing at the moment, how they're interacting and predicting sort of what they think will happen over peak. We're always open to like secondary plans as well, what happens if we're locked down, because obviously we're a high street retailer. And also brand like agencies that are quite agile, that they can sort of change and they're not sort of stuck in sort of one plan and won't shift from that, because at the moment internally, our internal teams, we're like shifting weekly on what we do just to try and keep up. So we need someone to sort of go along with that. And it's almost that sort of agile methodology. We're almost working little sort of 2-week sprints. So from a brand point of view, we're looking at sort of how the COVID lockdown and the move to online and the fact that things are starting to open up, but people are still nervous. How is that going to affect the high street in particular? Is there going to be a bigger war online? Is there going to be, or are people going to start moving back? Now schools are back. Yeah. Are they going to move back to the high street and start going into offices? I certainly notice on my commutes that roads are much busier in these last couple of weeks since schools are back. So, and it's just, I think being sensitive, we, as a brand, and we've seen a few other brands, that a lot of the advertising is giving a nod to COVID and understanding this has been a really hard year for everyone. Gaming's been really positive because people have connected on games where they wouldn't have been able to meet up in the future. So understanding that it's people are a bit stressed, they're a bit sad that they haven't met family, and potentially doing something a bit more sort of family feel and, you know, and how to connect people. I think it's at McDonald's that did that lovely ad that we've been talking about internally, where the grandparents went and got a McDonald's and put it on the boot of their car, and then the grandkids came out to get it. So they weren't.
I've seen that.
It's really lovely. They've been showing a lot internally at work, and it's really lovely because it's showing that they're being considerate of not pushing everyone into McDonald's together, that you can still use it and it can still be part of that family bonding. So I really like that, and I think a lot of brands are looking for that nod to COVID this year and not just brushing it under the carpet.
I know, although I don't quite know how I yet feel about all these adverts that start popping up with people wearing masks. Because I just feel like that's an easy way out, right? It's just like, oh yeah, wear a mask because everyone's wearing a mask. I saw something this morning actually, and I was like, I appreciate that we all do have to wear masks now, but I just don't need I think it was like an advert for like an airport, or obviously it was visit wherever, and all the family just wearing masks. I'm like, yeah, I want to be marketed to in a new way. I appreciate that advertisers, you know, and brands need to adapt to the times, but I don't just want you to shove a mask on and that's
I think masks, people don't like masks in general. We have to wear them, but people don't like them. And I don't think that, you know, putting a mask on, it kind of reminds them of something that they don't like. And also we have to be really mindful that some people can't wear masks, you know, people with autism, people with breathing problems. And if you start marketing too much towards the mask, you start alienating people, because there's already a lot of stigma where people that, you know, can't wear a mask because they've got sort of breathing problems, asthma, can't wear them to shops, and they're already getting vilified. And so if they're seen as the outsider, you have to be really sensitive with that, because people, particularly with hidden disabilities, get enough stick as it is. So you kind of, and there's quite a large portion of the UK that have them. So you've got to be sensitive. And it's a bit like when you're doing diverse advertising and you make sure you've got different representations from gender, from race. It's, you know, with diverse, you've still got to keep that diversity, that some people wear masks, some people have reasons that they can't wear them. So you kind of have to account for everyone.
But we need to understand, I mean, and that's the key, isn't it? I know there's loads of insights out there, but as a brand, my guess, Anna, what you want to hear from agencies is actionable insights. How do I understand the behaviours of my audience now? And how do I action new marketing tactics to reach, engage, and convert them? So in terms of, you know, you've chatted about quite a bit of stuff there, but two of the things that stuck out to me were the need for agility, for for game, and that's going to be the same with every brand. This is something that I started talking about with my agencies and the agencies that we work with on a retainer basis at Street, right at the beginning, and the importance now, if agencies haven't adapted their messaging to make sure that they're talking to brands to say, we're agile, we can help you change, because most brands, companies, whatever you want to call the people that us agencies work with, are going to have to change in some way. So how on earth do they grab your attention, Anna? And I'm hoping that you don't get loads of really crappy outreach emails after this. We can talk about what a good outreach email might be. But how, before we move on to Sam and Tish, how do you want to hear from agencies? How on earth can they get noticed by you?
I think for me, it's definitely even moving further. I think in the podcast we talked about being too generic, and it's about capturing me with even a sentence of insight that they understand what's going on in my industry. So, I got sent a wonderful, really thick white paper by an agency. This was pre-COVID, but it was all about gaming and about how it's perceived online, not just in the gaming sector, but across entertainment, etc. And that captured my attention because it was really interesting. I've been, and it was really relevant to me. I've been sent a few links to just sort of video blogs on the change of social media in COVID. And it's definitely that learning content that really excites me at the moment, because we're really busy internally. We're coming up to peak, we're running really late. If I can snatch some insights from places, and some of these video blogs, they're just someone in front of a camera and they've captured me with maybe the title of the email saying, actual insights for COVID, and then a sentence like, we've learned that XXX. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And the shorter the better. I want a couple of few points really, really quick, because I've got no time. Yes. So those are the ones that have really, really captured me. And I've seen a few just nice little actionable sort of points on sort of Instagram, that just little interesting stats that I can use in my presentations. And those sort of things really capture me because they're quick, they're easy to understand, and I can use them in presentations. And then I think this company kind of knows what it's talking about from what I can see.
Yeah, and they want to help you as well as help business. I think that's the key. Good agencies have a great value proposition that talks to the needs of the business or the company or the brand that they're talking to. But what you also have to do is talk to the needs of your actual prospect as well, and show them how you're going to help them reach their KPIs and do their job, and basically make their job easier for them. If you can make them look good, then we all want to hear about that. Certainly I did when I worked client side.
Yes, please. I want my job to be I want some people to hit the weight. So
exactly. Great. Definitely. And Sam, you're in a very luxury position where you get to work predominantly with agencies, but lots of agencies, and also what have you seen happening as we're kind of entering it is expected to be really busy in Q4, and we're already seeing more and more opportunities come through for our clients. It's really started to ramp up now.
I get to speak to a lot of agencies, so we partner with about 100 agencies in total, so mainly sort of on the digital side, sort of performance and design and build type of agencies, but exactly the same as you're saying there. Lots of opportunity. A lot of it's probably maybe smaller and shorter term than before, so a lot of proof of concepts going on around different elements. So we've been working really hard on this summer on building and designing sort of cloud solutions for people to do online events, because it was kind of March kind of time, all the events were cancelled, people were moving into October, and obviously that doesn't look like it's going to happen either. So they've now gone, right, we'll commit to virtual for now, and maybe even who knows where we'll be next March. So there's a lot of work going on there around proof of concept to sort of prove things out, because I think people have got the budget there, but they can't sort of sign off on the big long-term things because no one knows what's happening long-term, but they're willing to say, do you know what, we'll take a punt on the smaller project, test it out, and if it works, then we can roll out things on the back of it. So we're seeing a lot of that. I think that speaks to the agility thing. So and I've noticed, and again, I'm going to generalize here, but I think a lot of the smaller agencies I've seen have fared better, A, because the overheads are smaller, but B, because they generally are more agile, and they've kind of got the ability to say, oh, do you know what, it's a little bit outside of our comfort zone, but we'll give that a go. Whereas if you're a larger organization, that's going to be harder. But I think for us, what we're seeing is a lot of work, and we've just started getting to the point, because as with everyone, you kind of, during the period of COVID, you just take any opportunity and look at it and sort of say, yeah, we can get involved in this and that. And a lot of them dragged on a long time. But I think a lot of agencies that I've been speaking to recently were talking about the sort of need to get back to qualification and actually remember what we do well, where are we going to win, because there's going to be a lot of work coming up to that Christmas period, and you don't want to be chasing after everything because it will just distract you too much. So getting back to that kind of basic qualification criteria of what should we be going for, where, how and why, and what ones are we actually likely to win, and what's going to add value to obviously the bottom line, but also a lot of people have had to shift their propositions during this period. So if they were working purely with hospitality clients, which
not anymore,
yeah, exactly, it's hard. So then they had to shift their focus, and you might have spent 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years marketing to one particular industry, putting yourself, all your you're talking about insights and all your research and everything kind of out the window. So for those people particularly, it has to be about things that are going to move you to where you need to be over the next couple of years. So yeah, seeing a lot of that. And I think it's for us and for all the agencies, I was talking about this on a webinar the other day with some people around just how do we, it's gone from that, okay, we'll just wait this out and things will get better. And it's quite clear now that, people talk about new normal, etc. But there is, these events aren't going to happen, for example. So how do you get those fresh connections, those brand new connections without, and you're saying they're dropping things through LinkedIn, and that's not always the best way to get hold of someone. So it's how do you put your name out there more? How do we make new connections, not just continue the old relationships in a world where video is 70, 80, 90% of what we're doing, and probably is going to be throughout this winter at least. So it's just about thinking about those things. That's what we've been seeing people talking about as well.
Yeah, I think that there's two things that you mentioned. Well, all of it's incredibly relevant, but the key is now we're getting people understand that this isn't going away. That's kind of point number one, that the world that we are in is going to stay very virtual, as much as I don't like that personally, because I'm very much a people person. I'd much rather be sat in a room with you all than I would be sat on Zoom. But the way that we are now isn't going away. However, what I do truly believe all agencies have to do is you must think about your own marketing strategies and how you're going to reach people in this new world. In fact, Paul Dolman, I have seen that you've submitted a lovely question around COVID, and I guess this is kind of all COVID related, but I also agree I have got COVID fatigue. That you can't ignore that it's happening. It's not the only thing to talk about though, but what agencies do need to do right now is make sure that they've got a nurtured pipeline, because it's those that don't that will then be not qualifying their opportunities properly and going for the wrong kind of things, which they're much less likely to win. So the importance of developing a nurtured database of connections and contacts by developing your own helpful marketing strategies. That might be webinars, that might be insights content, that might be white papers, that might be posting on social channels, whatever that might be. If you don't do that and you're not doing that now, another agency is going to be, and your prospects are going to be trusting and listening to them and not trusting and listening to you. And just sending emails and just sending LinkedIn messages is not going to cut it. I think that for me is like the biggest learning for any agency. Just don't expect to be able to randomly send people messages, and you might get lucky, but the likelihood is they've already built a relationship with another agency that have been helping them for the past 2 or 3 months. And if you haven't,
I think it's one of those things, and Paul's question as well is I think is a distinction between just accepting that things work in a different way now, and then and acknowledging the COVID world without going on about COVID necessarily. Do you know what I mean? There's a distinction in that, just like this is a new world that we live in, and this is how it kind of works now, and it's for the next little while at least, it's going to be the hybrid model, whatever we're calling it, in terms of physical versus virtual contact. And we can do that without sort of specifically talking about COVID and sort of bringing out all, because people are fatigued with it. They have been listening to it since January now. And we're going to get a second wave by the look of it, and things are going to happen.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so but I think we can still just acknowledge that there's a new way of doing things and kind of nod to that without without sort of just repeating the same old thing.
Yeah, agree.
Some industries like ours have positive effects from it, so you can highlight the positives too.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think most of the agencies that have joined us, by the way, sorry, I've been rubbish at housekeeping today. If you have got questions for our wonderful panelists, please do submit them in the Q&A or in the chat. I'll make sure I keep an eye on both. But I think most of the agencies, and please do ask a question if you disagree with what I'm saying here. We've been running a poll each month, and most of the agencies, I think 70% of you guys have been doing more marketing and therefore nurturing the audience more than you usually would, and therefore I think 65% of you have been have won new business within since COVID hit, and I think even higher percentage, if I need to have a look at my little stats sheet, which I will send out, but again I think around about over 70% of you again are attracting between 3 or 4 new opportunities every month. So it sounds like, without me banging on too much about it, you guys all know, or majority, 70% of you know how to attract new business. What could be quite interesting, natural segue, is talking to Tish, because Tish actually helps agencies and brands with their presentation skills, and obviously the way that we present in this new world, which is a huge part of how we convert opportunities, has changed, because no more can you sit in a room with someone and have a coffee and have a normal chat with them. It is a very, very different world now. So once we've started to attract opportunities, and it sounds like most agencies are doing quite a good job of that, certainly that's what we help agencies do, and it's working. What can they do, Tish, to really start to better present and engage their prospects to ensure that they convert them?
Well, in this virtual world, it is quite tough. Yeah. And in fact, one thing I just wanted to say, just building on what Sam was talking about, just to represent the big agencies, is one of the things that I think is fabulous about the whole lockdown thing is that everybody has had to become more agile. I mean, I worked quite closely with a media agency just as it was all kicking off, a big media agency. They had a massive pitch, and they were all sent home, and 8 of them, the team of 8 of them, did it all virtually, did the pitch virtually, and they were so shocked at how quickly they were able to do all of this and switch to all of this. And I think that, the small, sexy digital agencies they've been far ahead of the big, perhaps more lumbering agencies, but I think this has been a massive opportunity for everybody to become more agile. In terms of the presenting bit, I harp on about this. I mean, in the real world, I harp on about death by PowerPoint, but I think even more important now to get to the point, and I think, hearing what Anna was saying about, don't make it hard for me, make my life easy. So anything that you can do in advance, anything that you can send in advance, I mean, you have to think about your audience. It's all about your audience. Some people like actually reading stuff in advance, because a presentation on Zoom, if it goes on for 3 hours, you've lost the will to live. Yeah. So you need to, really think about, again, back to agility, but really think about how to make it as dynamic as possible. I have a thing, they talk about the 10-minute rule, and I call it the 5-minute rule on Zoom. And you can't talk at people for more than 5 minutes. You need somehow to involve them, somehow to interact with them, or somehow to have something that breaks up the energy rather than talk at. I'm now looking at my camera. This is a top-tastic tip. Look at your camera, because then it looks like you're looking at the person in the eye. I was looking at you, Katie, which is like, I'm looking at you, Katie, and nobody cares, but look at your camera, and that really, really helps. Something that I was thinking, because obviously I've been thinking about this webinar, and a friend of mine was helping a startup find an agency. And she was completely pissed off because not one agency that they went to even offered them a biscuit. And I was thinking, you know, in this virtual world, a nice touch might be to bike some biscuits over, good ones, you know, the really chocolatey ones from Marks and Spencer's, but stuff, you know, just to nod to, because you're going to have a cup of coffee, aren't you, whilst you're sitting and listening to the pitch. So, I mean, that's one thing, but it's just trying to think of things to make it more of a multimedia presentation rather than just it's all on Zoom and that's the way it is.
Sorry, Brad Smith, who I know. Hi, Brad, by the way.
Hobnobs, absolutely.
Hobnobs will do the job. I think that's part of it, though. I mean, with one of our clients, we do the kind of large scale webinars to catch the prospects in the first place with, you know, high big brands and people that they want to hear from. But we also have started to do, you know, more intimate things where, you know, we're able to send them a little pack so they can order themselves a coffee and some snacks and have more of a round table type discussion. So it's thinking about how can you take the conversation on and push your prospects over the line, and or if you're in the pitch scenario, you know, it's the same. I used to pay when I headed up new business at agencies, I used to pay so much attention to the client journey. You know, where you would had, Anna, you'll remember this, you know, Hotel Chocolat biscuits and, you know, how they were welcomed and having a nice book and, you know, changing the design. You know, I know agencies that have, you know, changed all the colours of their clothes or, you know, that client journey when we were in the pitch scenario, you know, it is different, but the same rules apply. You've still got to level up. You've still got to think about what can I do that makes us stand out, that makes us look like we give a shit more than anyone else, that makes us, you know, shows us off in our best light.
Standing out is so important.
Yeah,
it's fun. So those fundamentals are really difficult as well at the moment because we've been doing it with our existing clients and partners where we did a wine tasting evening like very early on, which is an easy one to do on virtual. Yeah, we did a cocktail one the other day, which is really great. I mean, the difficulty is partly because people are getting a little bit of Zoom fatigue as well as everything else. But, you know, when you think about, we've thought about sending things to people and that kind of thing, then you realize they're probably working at home. I don't have the home address. And so they are really tricky things to get right. But I completely agree that the kind of fundamentals and the basics of what we've got to get right is that, coupled with just how on earth you get in front of people that have not seen you before. Because I don't know about you guys, but in what we do, we rely on events a huge amount because, you know, we've been seeing the same people at the same events, but obviously there's new people coming every year to certain events in kind of technology that we work with and those kind of things which just don't exist, and getting those eyeballs and on your brand for the first time is a really difficult thing for agencies and anything around that.
Definitely. Anna, you're going to have some great tips on that. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I mean, insights are great and lots of agencies send them out. And in fact, lovely Paul Hackett, I can see that you've said here, you know, agencies' key role now is about helping brands apply the insights and the learning. So all well and good sending insights, and there's so many out there. There's a minefield of information for all of us to take on board. But really, it's more about going, okay, so I've got these insights, but what the bloody hell do I do with them? You know, just sending another insights report, as helpful as that is, I just want to know how to do something with that. Really, as a, or certainly I would have done when I was, you know, working brand side. So, have you got any tips, Anna, for what agencies could be doing to help you, you know, as you enter a very busy Q4?
Yeah, I think it's funny actually. Everyone was saying about the sort of stuff that you can't do in person that you can do virtually, and it's really interesting because I think a lot of people have spent a lot more time on social media at the moment.
Yeah,
and it's kind of not just in work you can actually help people, it's outside of work as well, because people haven't been going to the office. I've been following a lot of people on LinkedIn, on Twitter. There's some great content coming out there. I think Dave Officer, he seems to have a large following on LinkedIn, Cedar Branch, they put some content on there. I've actually connected with photographers, copywriters, because they've put such good content out there that I really have to have them, and I don't need them right now, but I want to contact them when I'm ready. And I'm finding that that's actually although they're not helping me right now, I started building up this new roster of people of really exciting, interesting content that have really made the most of sort of like the time, and I can see that they've put the effort in. So it feels like even prior to that, you can see that these people, and before the pitch, you can see people that really shine on different channels, and they're exciting. And you're like, well, let's just put them on my roster for if I need something. And sometimes I've got projects in mind that might be in 6 months' time, but perfect. So it's kind of almost preempting that pitch as well, and giving people really good content so they can get ideas for the future. So I've been given all these ideas. I'm like, right, okay, I'll contact him in 6 months when I'm ready, and it's been absolutely fab. And then that sort of content kind of showcases what people can do as well. So like you said, they give me the insights, but I can see how they have, and it might not be in gaming, but I've seen how they've seen something and they've taken it into real life. Yeah. I interact with a couple of our agencies that I get on really well with on Twitter as well, and they sort of post some really interesting stats, some information, some other campaigns that they've done for other clients, and I think, oh, that's interesting. So it's this wealth of information, and it's this showing me ideas. And because sometimes in retail, particularly getting up to peak, you don't get the headroom for the creative.
No.
And it's hard for me to understand how creative an agency is without seeing it. But I don't have to see it irrelevant to me. I can see it irrelevant to other people. So, I know you're always a big fan of case studies, but I really like the point about how different people like information. So I'm very visual. I did actually do a test fairly recently about whether I was a kinesthetic, audio, or visual learner. I was zero audio, so generally sort of audio doesn't do much unless it's a Harry Potter.
Yes, I'm a Harry Potter fan, Anna.
Yeah.
For everyone out there.
So for me, I like videos and I like interacting on Twitter. I'm very sort of, hands-on. And not many people actually ask you about what content you would like and how you like to be presented, which is really important, because exactly what Tish was saying about, 3 hours on Zoom and you want it to 5 minutes, and what Sam's saying as well, you've got to think about the audience. And like for me, I like meeting in a room, like you can see, I'm a very people person. So how can people replicate that? And it would be nice for someone to ask. Someone did ask it recently.
Yeah.
And I was like,
in touch.
Oh, I've not actually been asked that before. I want videos. I want, if someone could do me a 10-minute video as a pitch rather than a 20-slide PowerPoint as an initial introduction, I'd probably more likely watch it, because I can, it's a bit of an easier stackable thing. So I thought that was really interesting. And so for me, it's getting to know me, and just like, if someone sent me some interesting stats and said, here's a video I think would be really useful, and then said, is there anything else that you would find useful? Just finding out about how I would like to be pitched would be really handy.
Yeah, I think the key, isn't it, is that continued content, and you've got to keep them engaged in the right way. So having lots of different types of content and sending you the right one is really important. Sorry, Sam.
Yeah,
that's right.
People are more analytical. They want a spreadsheet, so it varies.
I was going to say, we've been seeing on our end the occasional person asking around a physical meeting as well, because I think some people just really can't be doing another Zoom. So sometimes now, if I feel like the situation's right and the kind of communication is being right at that point, I'll put it on the table as an offer. We can do that over Zoom, but if you prefer, I'm comfortable if you're comfortable meeting up somewhere. And that's actually been taken up by quite a lot of people, I've found, because I think a lot of people are in a position where they're like, I don't mind, you don't mind, let's actually go and have a coffee. And I guess if they are meeting 4 or 5 people, then that's going to really set you apart if that was the only person they actually could see face to face while they're having that meeting. So I think that's something that we've started to just sort of explore a little more again. And yeah, again, that might change going into winter, but I think for now it seems like a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, and Steve has just submitted a question, but saying that he's been having business meetings in person, which have been really very comfortable, of course, respecting social distance rules, but just asking if anyone else has been. So I'm going to leave that question up from Steve. If you've had a meeting with someone in the real world, maybe give it a like, and so we can see how many thumbs up we get. But yeah, I've started to, and I have been very respectful of my clients, so I haven't necessarily been going out to them saying, do you want to meet? I probably have waited a lot of the time for clients to ask me, because I didn't want to seem to be being inappropriate in any way. But there are some things that we do that are much better done in person, like workshops or an initial client meeting. We've won quite a lot of new clients, believe it or not, during lockdown, because lots of agencies need help navigating and actioning their marketing strategy so that they can do everything that we've been talking about, reach new clients and build an engaged database. That's what we do. So I think be led by your audience. I mean, I work with agency owners and new biz directors who tend to be quite lively, outgoing people and tend to want to meet up in person. That's not necessarily the same for every agency and new business person, but I understand quite a lot about my audience, so I know that's probably going to be okay for me. So yeah, I think you've got to take it as it comes. There was another question which lots of people have liked, and I still haven't asked, so I'm going to, that Brad submitted, to asking how loyal do we believe brands will be to their current agencies versus using the opportunity to revisit and look at new agencies. I mean, has anyone got a view on that?
Well, I'd say from a personal perspective, it depends on the agency.
Yes,
so, about being agile, because if a brand is working with an agency and the agency is just doing what they've always done and they're not giving you anything new despite the current climate, then you're probably going to reconsider whether these people are agile enough for you. It's really funny. One of my favorite books and videos, you can watch the video on YouTube, it's a short cartoon, is Who Moved My Cheese? And it's fantastic, and we actually use it internally now. If someone we're working with, or or someone we see is not sort of moving with the times, we just sort of whisper under our breath, who moved my cheese? I recommend watch. It's all about change and how some people adapt and some don't, and how to how some people take a little bit longer. And it's really interesting. And if you've got a brand that doesn't like their cheese being, an agency that doesn't like their cheese being moved, then it's really difficult. And I think it's not just COVID that we see this, though. It's in sort of peak times as well. You need to have agencies that throughout peak, because things don't always go to plan in peak. A deal might not go very well, a piece of brand might not go very well. And you have this plan with sort of agencies, and sometimes when I've worked across brands, you can't change that plan, and something's just not working, but you just have to carry on with it anyway. And you're like, oh, it's not working, but everyone's like, it's too late to change stuff. And it's even worse this year. But generally, that sort of attitude needs to sort of be a little bit more agile. And it is hard changing stuff when you've got it all planned out. You've got things to be signed off, and it is difficult. But at the same time, retailers in specific are very numbers focused, and we're really tight, particularly this year, on numbers. And if something's not working at the end of that thing, if we've just powered through even though it's not working, there's going to be a look at the figures at the end and say, well, actually it didn't work. And if the agency hasn't helped us change and spotted that, they need to be a partner, and they need to help us do that. If they just sit failing and don't do anything and won't do anything, then that is really difficult, because how can you justify that as business? Yeah, we knew it, but we didn't do anything. So it's more compounded this year. But I think agencies need to, and I have worked at agencies as well that do that and just carry on, and and because that's what's planned in, and it's really hard to change. And a lot of companies, brands and agencies struggle with being that agile. So it's interesting. And I think bigger brands, bigger agencies, as we mentioned, do struggle with that. And I do prefer it when, particularly with bigger brands, where they almost act as lots of mini agencies within one agency, so they can be a bit more flexible.
Definitely, I think that's so important. Certainly I'm very lucky. We work with large networked agencies as well as smaller agencies, and it certainly isn't the case that larger agencies can't be agile, because they certainly can be, and it's totally dependent on the attitude of the agency and the CEO and the how they're set up. But I do think now is the time. Agility's been in front of mind for a long time, and was certainly there prior to what's happened over the past few months, but it's even more so now. There's another question here from Katie Howell. I think this is really, really interesting. So she says here, I read this morning some advice that BDs should not talk to brands unless they're clear on the budgets and timelines. He suggests time is better spent on agency strategy, and she disagrees, and she believes being helpful and building relationships are more important. Now, I agree with you, Katie. I do think initially being helpful is 100% the most important thing. Without a doubt, you need to be helpful, regardless of, you're not going to start the conversation talking about budgets and timelines, because that is not going to get you anywhere at all. However, there is a time in the new business process where that does become important. And I think maybe, I don't know who wrote that article, please do put a comment and let us know. But maybe it's someone that's talking more about latter in the process, because I do think certainly what we've seen, and I'm not necessarily so involved at the latter stages now, but that the CFOs are getting a lot more involved. They need to understand that it's going to be on time, it's going to be on budget, that it's going to get a return on investment. So at some point in the tender, pitch, opportunity, whatever you want to call it, process, that element is going to become important. It's not necessarily the first thing that you need to hear about.
It also depends on the industry, of course. So if you're not necessarily the industry, but what you're providing to them, because for most agencies it's a consultative sell, and so those things aren't mutually exclusive. You can be nice and kind and helpful to somebody and still be gently inquiring about, can these people afford our services, and do they have a timeline, and am I speaking to the right person, etc., all the normal sales things. Whereas if you're in an industry where it's very much a salesperson kind of role, where you're sort of doing something which is commoditized, and you're dealing with things which are almost who's doing it on the lowest price, then obviously there's a bit more of a sort of, if you're just driving numbers, there's a different side of that to just going in as an agency and being talking about someone's strategy and their business as a whole. You have more opportunity to sort of get under the skin of it. So but I find when we speak to people all the time that are looking for cloud services and might be just looking for something small and simple, which we can't really help them with, and they'd probably be better off going to find a sort of packaged product somewhere rather than a service business. And we still always try and be as helpful as possible, whilst once we understand that, it's better for us to be up front straight away and not string them along a process which is going to end up in them receiving some numbers and timelines which is just not going to work for them.
Yeah, but it's an important question to ask when you're in that tender process. Understand what the budgets are early, so that whether you can help them, or like you say, Sam, whether you need to refer them on to someone else, or it's part of the conversation, but it's not part of the prospecting, I would say, personally.
But on a broader level, pitching is such an expensive thing for agencies. They put so much time, so much effort into it, and how galling is it if you put an awful lot of effort into something and there isn't actually any budget at all, or there isn't anything at the end of it. And I guess that the new business director's role is absolutely to start forming that relationship and making what the agency does, getting across the relevance, the role that the agency could play, and why them, why nobody else.
Yeah.
Most important thing of all. But so building all of that up, and yes, not necessarily getting a huge pitch team involved unless there is actually some money behind this. Otherwise it's such a waste of your resource.
Yeah,
it goes back to the basic qualification questions again that we've talked about before, I think, Katie, where it's like you should have it's not either needs to be in your head or actually a written thing, which when someone approaches you about a piece of work, you have to have some questions in your head, and you know, all those things that are on that list from, I think it was Rob DeCosta you're saying, Katie, was, you know, timescales, process, who's involved. And there was another question in the chat around how many agencies is too many, and those types of things. That all should go into a kind of mix of criteria. Do we know anything about this industry? Have we got good case studies where we can say we've done these types of things before? Do we know anybody at the client? Do we know if this is a bit of a stitch up because they already know who they're going for and it's part of a procurement process? All of those things you should be able to gauge a feel for, and at the end of it you're going to have some kind of score, which is 10 absolutely go for it, this is a shoe-in for us, and 1 which is this is a complete shot in the dark. And then obviously the amount of other opportunities you have at the moment is going to dictate whether, you know, if it's somewhere in the middle, the amount of opportunities you have is probably going to dictate whether or not you put that in the go pile or the no pile. That's how we used to do it, at least.
Well, I think, you know, having those, I always used to have like my Katie's top 20 questions. So one, to remind me to ask them, but also if someone else was, you know, when you're doing new business at scale, you know, it's not one person's job, it's usually lots of people's job to make sure that you have qualified that opportunity, you know, is super, super important. But I think, you know, there's something that I've certainly seen is, you know, most agencies will come to us and say, you know, we're great at converting. We know how to do the winning. Well, not all, but majority will go, we know how to win. We just need the leads. But they've not done anything to develop the leads. Like Anna, you were talking about earlier, you know, they've not kept in touch. They've not done their outreach in a clever way that's enabled them to build a nurtured audience of prospects that now trust them. So lots and lots of agencies are scrambling now, going, shit, we need to, sorry, excuse my French, you know, we need to build and nurture an audience, because Sam, exactly like you say, what happens if not is you're going for opportunities that you haven't qualified, or you would probably qualify yourself out of if you were doing your job properly, because you don't have anything else in your pipeline. And the market has been a little bit quieter. I do think that means, well, a few things. Clients have been nervous. People are hoping that this was magically going to disappear, which it hasn't done. So Q4 now, lots of agencies are going to experience, hopefully, more incoming opportunities. Certainly the ones that have been marketing themselves through COVID, which most of you have been doing, but some of you won't have been doing. If you haven't, it's not too late. You just need to really think about what you're going to do now to help and engage your audience. And I think that, Katie, that's exactly what you were saying, is, you know, reaching out. And in fact, you've said there, not saying don't ask the question at some point, but, you know, in that initial stage, it's got to be about, you know, being helpful and starting a conversation, not about asking them, you know, what their budgets are, because they're going to be like, why would I tell you that? You know, it's way too early in the conversation to do that, really. So we are fast approaching the end, which always happens, and I will, as always, launch our poll, and we do have a nice little infographic that I'm going to share with everyone after this month's session. So I just wanted to ask everyone here. So Sam, you have been doing new business, you know, forever, a bit like me. It's always been, even if not in our job title, something that we're very, very focused on doing. I just wanted to ask everyone their kind of top tip now as we enter Q4, what you would advise agencies to be focusing on.
So I think 2 for me would be the qualification one, which I've already talked about, and making sure you're going after the right opportunities and not wasting your own time, which I think is a fairly obvious one. And the other one is just being creative in the way you can close things. I mean, I've found recently, and I think all the agency people that I've spoken to have found, is things are slower. So you go through the normal process, and then there's like someone's got to sign some paper somewhere, and that doesn't happen, or happens on a much longer timeline than normal. So I think you need to be creative in the ways that you can get people to that point, whether it be from a commercial perspective or you know, I've seen a lot of agencies, like I said, looking at smaller proof of concepts before a larger piece, just to whet the appetite kind of thing. I think that being creative in that area will help people close more business in this period where things are a little bit unknown and unsure. Agreed.
Anna, any top tips from you?
Oh, difficult one. I think for me, it's about bringing value. So looking at sometimes, and having been worked agency side, you can think a little bit internally about the agency. You see a lot of websites about us and who we are and what we do, but it is definitely looking more at the client, I think, at the moment, and how can we help you, how can we get through this, and how can we make your life better. And particularly, and it doesn't have to be about the client, but it can be showing case studies and content. Content for me is absolutely key at the moment on selecting people. Our digital PR agency, we spotted them at Brighton SEO, and they just did a great presentation. And so webinars like this, just capturing us, is really, really useful. And I echo what Sam said about small projects. So for our digital PR agency, we'd never done digital PR. So we did a small project with them last Christmas, and it was very small, so easy to get signed off. It wasn't into a retainer. They did it. We had the results. We presented it around the business, and now they are on a retainer. So for us, that was the way into, don't, exactly what Sam says, don't always pitch big. Sometimes you just need to try. And also it's good for the agency to see whether you fit together. Agency side, you want to make sure you've got a client that gets you and understands you, because you're not going to fit with everyone. And I'd say that about your content as well. Some of the content I've seen on LinkedIn, some of it's quite extreme. There's this really funny one about this guy. Every week he's got this thing called "Who's in My Hole?" and it's very innuendo, tongue-in-cheek, and he basically has asked someone 5 questions, I think it is, every week, and it's everything about it is really innuendo, and it's really funny, and he will not attract every client, but it's very him and it's very niche. I love it, and I think it's really funny. So try and think about content that really shows off your brand and is really going to get noticed, rather than something a bit like a generic white paper or something.
Love it. Anna, you've got a fantastic here. Paul Dolman said, Anna, the 10-minute video COVID, social media, gaming, retail insight agency introduction in the style of the Goblet of Fire is going to be on its way to you.
I don't know if anyone's seen Harry Potter Puppet Pals. It went around a few years ago, and it was like Harry Potter puppets. And if someone pitched to me with Harry Potter puppets, it's probably straight in there.
Yeah, so you make it fun. Make it that you've got to get yourself to stand out, and where it's bits all stuck and zoomed out. So if you
I mean, you can tell a lot by LinkedIn profile pictures. I've got purple hair and fun.
In fact, and I always talk about this, use Crystal Nose. Have I spoken to you about Crystal Nose, Anna?
Yes, it sounds brilliant.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I mentioned it to you, haven't I, Tish? It's such great software. If you haven't installed Crystal Nose, and it's not Crystal Nose, I wouldn't talk about it because I hate my nose. It's Crystal Nose, KNOWS, and it gives you personality insights on your prospects. I think you get 10 or 20 free credits, so you can stalk 10 or 20 of your favorite prospects or your top prospects, and it actually gives you information on their personality. It tells you how to sell to them, how to outreach to them, how to engage to them, how they'll likely respond to certain types of emails, certain types of language. It's amazing and so worthwhile, rather than just, look, of course we all do the mass marketing stuff. We need to do the mass marketing, but when you're trying to take the conversation on and you've identified, your top 20 or your top 100 prospects, really, pay attention to those and use things like Crystal Nose to help you, move it along a little bit more. I've got loads more questions. I will try and sneak some in the last 5 minutes. But Tish, top tip from you. In fact, there has been a nice question from a lovely person called Jamie Lawson. I don't know if you're a man or a woman, so I'm saying person rather than man or woman. He said, she said, I'd be really interested to hear how you deal with multiple personalities in a pitch.
Oh, yeah. I saw that one.
Yeah, a quick 2 minutes from you, Tish, on how people should deal with that.
Well, I would regard multiple personalities as a challenge. Always think about who your stakeholder is, the most important person in the room. That is absolutely key. But you can have a lot of fun playing to different styles. I think it's very hard in a pitch when you don't know anyone. So taking one little step back from answering this question, the whole thing about building chemistry with your audience and getting your audience to like you. So these are the almost like the primal things, although I have to say what Sam and Anna said, totally all of those as well. So for me, it's building that chemistry, trying to get to know your audience, using crystal nose, using LinkedIn, cyber stalking, but don't be creepy about it, you know. Cyber stalk, find out everything you can find out about them. And as fast as you can, you want to try and build that rapport. And when you get a sense of them, then you can start to manage the room. My favourite example of this is when you're presenting to a board of an agency or board of a client company, and you've got in the room all the different personality types. So you would say, right, for the finance director, the CFO, a very, very detailed chart. You say to everybody, this is for the finance director. And then you'd have the visual expression of that. And you turn to the more creative people and say, and this is what this actually means. And people love you for this because they know, you know, back to Anna's point about people, you know, asking me, and I'd like a YouTube film, that's I'm really thinking about what their needs are. So that would be my kind of top thing. I love the point though that you guys made about start small. And I remember when we pitched for TGI Fridays, it was a poxy little radio campaign. We were a big agency, we were McCann's, and they were a bit surprised to go with us because they didn't want to go with a big agency. They fancied a little hot shop. But this account grew and grew and grew. And the fact is, for big agencies speaking here, is everybody wanted to work on it because we did great work. So, you know, you can be a small brand. The big agencies love working with you because they're stuck with these global giants that they can't really mess with. So don't dismiss the small agencies. And Anna, I wish I was in the agency world. I want to pitch for your business.
I know.
I'd love you as a client.
No.
Katie, back to you.
Thank you. Oh gosh, it always gets the most exciting conversation going right at the end. Why does that happen? So just before we close, I am in the very last 2 minutes just going to launch the poll. So for those of you that are still with us, and most of you are, I think only about 5 people have left. Well, hey, we've obviously talked about some helpful stuff today.
That's good news.
Yeah. So yeah, please.
Better than I normally get.
Yeah, we're dropping out. So yeah, please do fill out the poll. We are actually going to share the results that we have to date. But I think, you know, what's really encouraging is what it's showing is, you know, most of you have been doing more from a marketing point of view, which 100% is the right thing to do. And what that has meant is that over the past few months, what we've seen coming through in the poll is each month, the amount of new business that the agencies that are investing in their marketing is going up. So, you know, it is 100% worthwhile. You know, do really think about everything that the guys have said today, and how that could map into your own marketing plans, so that you can, you know, really reach and develop a, you know, conversation with the audience that truly need you. And there's lots of things that you need to do that, but, you know, the biggest thing is don't do nothing, because if you do nothing, there'll be other agencies that are doing something, and you will lose your potential clients, and even potentially your existing clients, which maps back to one of the questions earlier. You know, if you're an agency that hasn't maybe been as agile, or has been, you know, doing kind of routine stuff rather than thinking about how you need to change things for your clients, and you've not been communicating to new clients either, then I'm sure there's none of you out there that are doing this, by the way. But, you know, they're going to be in more trouble than the ones that have been really proactively talking. And, you know, there will be people that are talking to your clients that are trying to steal your business. So yeah, also don't forget to market and communicate to your existing clients. That's a huge thing. It's much cheaper to keep, I think 1 in 10 times more expensive to win a new client than it is to keep an existing one. So also don't forget to market and communicate with your existing clients. So yes, thank you all. We are at midday. Very quickly, Sam, as our fantastic sponsor, and thank you so much for, I know this has been about three months now that you've been with us on this journey. They do have a fantastic partnership program with some amazing free assets that are available to all of our lovely listeners. Sam, do you want to talk a little, very quick 1 minute about
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, if you don't know, just after midnight, we are one of the only 24/7 support providers in the sort of agency world. So especially for digital agencies, when people are running campaigns and supporting websites and applications 24 hours, then oftentimes agencies will use us to provide that support on their behalf. We're kind of a non-competitive, friendly partner in that sense. We do a lot of cloud consulting along with it, and we have a partner program that you can join, or we can just have a chat, whatever way you like. And you can see that at justaftermidnight247.com/street, because we have a little offer just for people from this webinar.
Yeah,
there you go.
True, you know, it isn't that easy to do. Any agency owner will know there's certainly smaller ones, and even, you know, larger independent agencies, you know, unless you've just got a developer sat with a phone by his bed, that isn't really 24/7 support. So Sam really does help agencies give true 24/7 support, which is very useful.
I don't just do it myself. So.
No, not really.
It's just not me with a mobile phone.
Yeah, no. We've got offices all around the world now. That's a whole other story, how brilliant you guys have done. So thank you to all my lovely guests. I'm going to end the poll. So if you're still here, you can see the results. Hopefully it will look nice and pretty. I don't get to see the pretty version till afterwards on the recording. But yeah, lovely to see everyone. Thank you for joining, especially when lots of kids are back to school this week, and hope to see you all very, very soon.
See you soon.
Bye everyone. Thanks guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.